Good morning, everybody. I'm CENTER Maine Zach Blanchard, and this is Political Brew. I'm joined now by Republican analyst Phil Harriman and Democrat Ken Altshuler. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Good to see you.
Good to see you both.
How have you been?
Doing great.
So there wasn't much.
Happy Father's Day.
Oh, happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
So not much to talk about in the political world this week.
Nothing happening.
Except for this, former President Donald Trump arraigned in federal court on charges related to his handling of classified documents. He and his allies say he did nothing wrong and that this is a political attack. It's not often Maine Governor Janet Mills weighs in on national politics like this, but she has been critical of Trump in the past. So this week we asked her about the indictment.
I did read the indictment. It's pretty detailed, very professional document with photos and all. We'll certainly look forward to the process being carried out as our courts are most able to do.
Now, Ken, let's start with you. Obviously, a pretty safe response from the governor here. With the exception of Congresswoman Shelley Pingree, all of Maine's top politicians are avoiding this issue. Why?
Well, because they're politicians. And there's certainly a logic to it, and they're right. A person is innocent till presumed innocent until proven guilty, and that's how our judicial system works. And when you're attacking the DOJ and attacking the court system, the smart thing to do is say, let's play it out. Let's do it the right way. And I think it's safe. And I think being safe is the political approach to it. I think Shelley came out very aggressively, but I thought Janet Mills was very neutral, as was everybody else's, and I think it's probably the right answer.
Bill?
Well, I don't think there's any love lost between Governor Mills and President Trump. She's been very clear about that, politically speaking. So for her, as a former prosecutor, to read the indictment and draw the conclusion that, yeah, there's a case here that has merit, and let's let the court system do what it's designed to do. So good for her for handling that way.
And you said you were even surprised she spoke out at all, right?
Yes, yeah.
All right, shifting gears now, a big win for Governor Mills to round out the week, signing the state's highway fund budget into law. After bipartisan negotiations, a portion of sales tax on vehicle purchases will now go to the fund. The fund was previously largely reliant on the gas tax. The governor's office expects that will amount to more than $200 million for infrastructure repairs every 2 years. Phil, it's rare we get to talk about some bipartisan successes
indeed.
in Augusta.
I think a large part of this initiative was a Republican idea that got embraced. So good for the legislature, good for the governor, but most especially good for our infrastructure. I think it's the gas tax, as we know, is one of the sources. And in the past, the other sources have been bond issues. Well, a bond issue has to go up before the voters and be approved, and it takes time. So this now more consistent funding will enable the Department of Transportation to do more long-range planning and get projects out there quicker.
And it was Republicans who were arguing for that more consistent part of it, Ken. Is that the right move?
Sure. And of course, bond issues. There's never been a bond issue Mainers haven't just loved to embrace, particularly when you say highways and bridges. But yes, it's great to see bipartisan support. It's great to see consistency and stability. And you say bridges and roads, and you're going to get a vote.
All right, in case you missed it this week, there was an election in Maine. In fact, Republicans flipped a seat in the legislature. Voters in House District 45 elected Republican Abden Simmons to represent them over Democrat Wendy Pay. Just 121 votes separated the two candidates. Abden will take the seat after Clinton Collmore resigned. He was charged with forging signatures to collect public election funds and violating the Maine Clean Elections Act. We learned this week he will spend 3 days in jail after pleading guilty. Ken, a solid win for Republicans here. Is that a surprise for this part of the state?
I think it was a reaction to the elected official having to resign. And I think it was a vote to say we don't like that kind of behavior, which I think is great. I think it's great to say, you know, your party's going to suffer as a result of who you nominated to run for this office. I don't see a huge trend here. The Democrats are clearly in control of the House. I don't think it's a trend of what's going to happen in 2024, but I think it does send a message that Mainers expect their politicians to be somewhat clean, and I think that's a good message.
Well, I think some are hopeful it is a trend.
Yeah, yes, I do. But I also think Ken is absolutely right. But more to the point, I think, is that Republicans won this seat for the first time in like a decade, which is that's a good sign for Republicans. And they got on the ground and they did a good job of getting absentee ballots counted. So the Republicans in general, I think, have learned from past elections where ballot harvesting and other methods of getting people to vote was not their strong suit.
They've learned from the Democrats, is what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah.
It's hard to get people out to vote in these. So, and while we're talking about the election, voters in Portland came out strong against changes to rent control. It sought to repeal a 5% rent cap. Question A failed overwhelmingly with just 33% of the vote. Phil, already we're hearing another rent control question could make it on the ballot again in November. Is this fight worth it?
It's becoming a mess, and I predicted on Political Brew when I was on with Ethan Strimling that this bill would not pass in the ballot. It clearly got defeated by a resounding number. But the underlying problem is that landlords do not have the ability to come in and make capital improvements in their buildings and amortize those costs. And the referendum, as I understand it, Zach, said the city council can't go in and make any amendments to this referendum that passed for 5 years. It created, I think, a lot of unintended consequences.
Okay.
Despite my liberalism, I think this is extreme. And I think that, if you go for
Can you repeat that, please?
Yes, despite my liberalism. Look, Portland's become very, very socialized. I mean, it reminds me of Seattle. And some of the examples of Seattle are not good. This is an extreme measure, extreme socialism. And I think what it's going to do is make a lot of landlords have condos rather than rent their apartments out. It's going to make the housing market less available, which is the opposite of what we want to do. So I think that it's a trend that's happening here. I think Portland's extremely liberal, more liberal than I am, and I think moderation is best, and so I condemn it. I don't think it's good for the city. I don't think it's good for the economy of the city, and I don't think it's good for people who need places to live in this city either.
I think Phil's silence means he agrees with you.
Astonishing, astonishing. You've come around, Ken, finally.
So with that, we're going to take a quick break. The Weekend Morning Report is back right after this. Good morning, everybody. I'm New CENTER Maine's Zach Blanchard, and this is Political Brew. I'm joined once again by Republican analyst Phil Harriman and Democrat Ken Altshuler. Thanks for staying with us. All right, the story that isn't going away anytime soon, former President Donald Trump's indictment. Trump appeared in a federal court in Miami this week, pleading not guilty to 37 charges for his handling of classified documents. It's getting a lot of reaction from politicians all across the country, but not so much in Maine. Republican Senator Susan Collins shared this statement saying it certainly is an extraordinary development. In our country, a principle of the judicial system is that an individual is presumed innocent until proven guilty. Phil, even Independent Senator Angus King shared a one-liner that really had the same message. Why is there hesitancy to take a stronger stance, at least at this point?
Well, I think the facts are now clear that the Department of Justice is on the road to trying to convict him, and they have filed the papers, and so at this point, I think it's wise for all elected officials to say this is now in the judicial branch of our government. Let the case begin, let the hearings be heard, and let the decisions be made by a jury of his peers.
Ken?
Sure, as I said earlier, it's politics, and politics are to make smart statements, try not to put your foot in your mouth, as some manage to do. We have a system and we have a process, and we should follow the process. Man is innocent or proven guilty.
But at the same time, these charges are really significant. This is a historic moment for our country.
Well, political pundits can talk about whether he's guilty or innocent in their view. That is an incredible indictment. It was extremely well done. It has great proof behind it. We're talking about actual evidence, and most condemning of all is his statement that he knew what he was doing was wrong. He knew it was secret. He knew he wasn't supposed to have it. It's clear to me that he violated the law, and the indictment is very solid. Whether he gets convicted or not is a different issue.
Well, and I think that's the point I'm trying to make as well, is that the evidence they have is very convincing on its surface, but that's just one side. The defense has a chance to tell the rest of the story, and that's what we.
Of course, the defense is talking about them making it a document issue. Should he be able to have documents? It's concealment. Right. That is the problem with what Donald Trump did.
It's him not giving the documents
Correct.
back.
If he had given it back, we wouldn't be having this discussion. But that's Donald Trump, and he kept what was his. And it was illegal for him to do that.
And I think this points to a larger issue. Polling out by Reuters this week found 81% of Republicans said politics was driving this case, that the criminal charges against Trump are purely political. Phil, that's a staggering number.
Yeah, but I think the reason that's appearing as large as it is, Zach, is because there are equal serious accusations against the Biden administration taking bribes and from foreign countries, and there doesn't seem to be the same judicial zeal to get to the bottom of this and file an indictment. And I think that's why people are saying, wow, if it's Trump, we're going after him. If it's Biden, we're hands off.
Well, we had the Trump AG and Department of Justice investigate Hillary Clinton for 3 years, found nothing. You don't think they would have charged if they found something? You have Joe Biden who found documents and turned them over. Mike Pence found documents in his house, turned them over. Not hid them, didn't secret them, didn't obstruct justice. So the weaponization of the DOJ, Donald Trump tried to get DOJ to intervene in the election and challenge election results. He weaponized the DOJ far more than anybody else in history. So it's a little hypocritical of him, if I may say.
Well, but to the point of the polling is that people perceive this to be politically motivated. Why? Because I think there's a feeling of an unequal
Sure,
approach
but that
to
was created by
justice.
Donald Trump, who said if I shot somebody in Times Square, my base would still vote for me. He's absolutely right, unfortunately.
Yeah, and speaking of that, meantime, the GOP field for 2024 hopefuls is forced to confront this, but the approach is drastically different from candidate to candidate. I want to do something a little bit differently here, a bit rapid fire. Agree or disagree when it comes to the statement shared by some of those in the running. First up, Nikki Haley this week said Trump was incredibly reckless with our national security, but would be inclined to pardon him if he was elected. Phil, agree or disagree?
I agree. He has been reckless. I don't see any indication that he has been using these documents to aid an enemy of our country.
Ken?
Incredibly reckless, but talking about pardoning right now before he's even tried, and why would you pardon somebody guilty of a crime? So that part of it I disagree with.
Moving on to Chris Christie, calling Trump's actions inexcusable, going on to call him angry, vengeful, even a loser. Ken, agree or disagree?
I agree, although he is an attack dog, so you got to take what he says with a grain of salt. I do agree with him, but that's what his role is.
Yeah, I agree. Christie's in this just to agitate Trump, and so far he's making doing a good job.
That he is. And finally, Ron DeSantis saying, is there a different standard for a Democrat Secretary of State versus a former Republican president? Phil, obviously a dig at Hillary Clinton here. Agree or disagree?
I agree. The damage she did to phone and the server, information that she should not have had outside of government security, I agree.
Okay.
Disagree. She was investigated by the Trump Department of Justice, and no charges were brought against her. So how would the Trump Department of Justice, who's taking their direction from Donald Trump, be unfair in that investigation?
Meantime, he is the front runner. Let's wrap things up with winners and losers. Phil, we'll start with you.
My losers this week are the Maine legislators who signed a pledge to allow consumers to decide what energy to use. They pledged not to vote for a bill that would direct what they could use. They broke that pledge this week in the legislature. And my winner this week are all the father figures who help our society move forward and serve as mentors for our youngsters.
The loser of the week is clearly Donald Trump, who got indicted with a very strong indictment and clearly, in my opinion, was guilty of those charges. The winner of the week is Bill Barr, former Attorney General of the United States, who has really been honest and direct about Donald Trump and has said, you know, he at one point he was kind of a lapdog for him, and he's really turned around and been very independent. I'm very impressed by him, and I think he's the winner of the week.
Surprised to hear you say that, Ken. Ken, Phil, thanks so much for joining us. And that's going to do it for this week's Political Brew. The Morning Report is back right after this.